It's the lack of work ethic and drive and real life experience that's causing it as well. But all these gurus that are, teaching a lot of this stuff have never worked a sales job in their lives.
I remember I reached out to someone to also be on this podcast. They're like, thank you so much for considering even my brand. I appreciate you.
The only time you don't say thank you is when you close the deal. You always say congratulations.
If you were to talk to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Get smart with money. I started making six figures very young. All the luxury things I bought and all the Louis Vuittons and Gucci's and whatever, I have bags still with all that stuff still in its wrapper. I've never even used it.
Your family said, we're not a business family. Go the school route. Why do you think you're built different? Like, why did you say, no, I'm not doing this? I got a special guest today. A good friend and a mentor, I would even say, of mine. Someone who I regularly learn from, always go to in terms of advice. Pouya Hadairi. He has done over 46 million plus in sales revenue, over 100 million plus in client revenue generated, 12 plus years in sales, worked with multi-billion-dollar companies, celebrity salespeople. Bro, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me on. It's long overdue. We've been trying to set this up for a very long time, so I'm glad to be here.
Very overdue. But for those people who don't know who you are, I want you to go into your story a little bit and talk about this. These are some huge numbers. This is a lot of experience, over a decade of experience in sales. How did you get to this point?
Yeah, so obviously it didn't happen overnight. We've known each other for a long time, so you've seen me go through the process and go through all of these different stages of being in sales, being in leadership roles, being in more of the corporate world, where I was in more of executive roles and partnership roles, and then venturing out on my own and starting the business and wanting to just scale things out and do things on my own terms. So those are all chapters of the sales and business world. And it's funny because when you look back, hindsight is 2020. In hindsight, it all looks like a natural progression. But when you're in it, in the moment, it definitely isn't. It's a lot of ups and downs and, U-turns and sideways and going down, blocked avenues, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, even though there's ups and downs, as long as you're headed upwards and you're going in the right trajectory, that's all that matters. So that's what sales really has been for me. I got into sales when I was really young. You remember, we were still in high school where I started reading some books and came across my first mentor that really stuck out to me, and I remember him and his messages really resonated, who was Jim Rohn. And through his teachings around self-development and, for things to get better, you have to get better. For things to change, you have to change. Things like formal education can make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. All these different sayings really stuck with me, and I decided, I want to control my own life. I decided I want to create a life that I'm really fulfilled with and I'm happy with. And I thought to myself, well, I need money to do that. And how am I going to get money? Well, I got to be in business. And I remember talking to some friends and family members and everybody saying, well, our family isn't, a business family, so you don't really have that to learn from. You better just follow the school path or whatever else. And I realized, that's terrible advice. So I just decided to take it upon myself to educate myself in that regard. Again, self-education. So I invested every dollar I had from side hustles, jobs, everything else, going to business conferences, seminars. I remember driving to, I think my first one was in Chicago, Illinois, if I'm not mistaken. Then I went to Florida, I went to Atlanta, I went to Miami a couple times, went to St. Louis a couple times. There's all these different places for like business conferences, and I would try to get in rooms with, higher level individuals and, pick their brains, ask them questions, just get that connection and really prove out the concept to myself that this is a real thing. Seeing real successful people with my own eyes and conversating with them just kind of proved out the concept. And then from there, I decided if I want to be in business, I got to learn sales because I got to learn how to generate revenue. And then eventually maybe I can get closer to the leadership, the management, to the business owners. Maybe I can get into their closer circle, move my way up these different companies, and that'll open doors. And that's pretty much exactly what happened. And here we are today.
That's beautiful, man. So you mentioned your family said, we're not a business family. Go the traditional route. Go the school route. Go to school, get a job, all that stuff. Why do you think, I guess, in a way, why do you think you're built different? Like, why did you say, no, I'm not doing this? What was the mindset that made you switch to I should listen to my family, go the traditional route, no, I'm doing it my way?
I've thought about this a lot over the years, and I've done a lot of introspection and introspective work in general, and I think you have as well. And really, at the end of the day, it comes down to the same question. I know we talked about this before on the last podcast that we did together, and we've talked about this a million times in personal life as well. It's nature and nurture, and what percentage is what. And I haven't quite put my finger on it or figured it out yet, and I don't think I can tell you with absolute certainty. But what I do know is a part of it is just natural wiring and whatever you want to call that. But the majority of it is definitely nurture. It's definitely my upbringing. It's definitely going through a lot of challenges in childhood. You know, I was born and raised in a whole different part of the world until I was 10 years old, and then moved over here to the western side of the world, and my entire paradigm changed, right? And at 10 years old, you're already old enough where you have life experiences and enough context where you feel like you're forming your identity, but then your identity completely gets disrupted. And I think that was the biggest change. And for me, it was just, I came from such a place of, yeah, like challenges, hardships, that fire was just there. And I wanted to do something with it. And it cultivated this competitiveness that translated into sports, whether I was playing soccer, I was playing rugby, whether it's martial arts, whether it's business, and business is the ultimate sport, right? 24/7, 365. So I think it's just that those challenges early on really, I hate the word, but really manifested themselves in, I feel bad that I even had to use that word. But, you know, they manifested themselves in who I became later on.
So, for someone who isn't, that person who's had a rougher upbringing, that has built that hunger, that drive, that competitiveness, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to define success for themselves, you know, figure out what really drives them, what a fulfilling life on their own terms really looks like. It doesn't really matter if you come from money or you don't come from money. Of course, there are inherent advantages both ways, by the way. And, you know, if I had to start over again and I had a choice whether to come from money and not come from money, it'd be a hard one. Because of my biases and my life experiences, I would probably say I would choose not to come from money because I know the character traits that taught me. But if you come from money as well, I mean, life is so much easier. You have so much more of an upper hand. You have so many more inherent advantages. You have just much more of a head start. So I would say, regardless, both have their advantages and disadvantages. So if you don't really have that drive currently, first of all, take a step back and analyze yourself. And let's go back to basics: sleep, diet, exercise. Any negative habits you got to get rid of that are just killing your drive, killing your testosterone, just killing your focus and your cognitive abilities, all these things. And once you get those back to the fundamentals, then you can start to really look at what does a successful life look like for me. And as long as you're pursuing that direction, I think you're going to be happier. I think you're going to start to find that drive over time.
Gotcha. What are some habits that you would recommend people to start incorporating into their daily life to become this more driven person that is going towards what they believe is success?
I think, again, it all starts with you first, right? Anytime I even set goals or anytime I think about things, my brain is very categorized and very OCD in a way. It's very compartmentalized. So I have to think of everything in very almost structured ways. And when I'm thinking about habits or when I'm thinking about goals, I'm thinking first I have to start with me. So that's mind and body. And I later on added spirituality to that as well. So mind, body, spirit, I want all of that on full maximum. So for my mind, I like to read a lot. So ideally, if I can wake up, have my morning coffee, and read for an hour or so, that's the ideal day-to-day routine, you could call it. For body, of course, exercise every day. You know, we both do martial arts. We both play certain sports. We lift. We go to the gym. All these different things. So that's for the body side of it. And for spirituality, I've been going down a very deep spiritual path in terms of reading old biblical texts and different books that are correlated, and just really pursuing all of that realm with an open mind, because I didn't really have any religious beliefs before, and didn't really subscribe to any of the popular religions, but just being open to life in general. Like, we really don't know anything. So just being completely open to that and pursuing the spiritual realm and feeling good in all those different ways. So those are some habits that would put all that in place. And then I think above and beyond that is just execution, doing the work, because that's how you're going to feel good about yourself. You can do all of that. And if you go your entire day without actually working on your goals, on your priorities, even if I've read my books, even if I've got a nice workout in, even if I've, felt like spiritually I'm in a good place, but that day I didn't do my work, I didn't move my business forward, I'm still not going to feel good. It's not going to be an equal balance in terms of my outlook on the future. So I think above and beyond all that is the actual execution of it, doing your work, moving your priorities forward.
So basically, the habits that you do, of course, reading, exercising, spiritual connection, but these are ultimately defined by your goals. You're saying make a custom, whereas everybody's saying, oh, you should get up and meditate and do this and do this. It's like, no, first define what your definition of success is and then find out what the actions are behind that.
Yeah, that's a really good takeaway. I love that you kind of took that out of it because it's so true. I'm not a big believer in, everybody needs to do the same thing. And what's funny? Me and you have actually done all of this. Me and you have been in this game for a very long time. And I remember being like 17 years old, waking up at 5 a.m., writing my goals, doing gratitude, meditating, listening to Jim Rohn while I'm eating egg whites and oatmeal. These are real stories and real memories that I have, right? I've gone through the path. The reason, I joke about the law of attraction and the secret and all that stuff as well, which we can tap into if you like, because I think we're like on a little bit of a different gradient on that stuff, but we're pretty much on the same page. But the reason I make jokes about all that is because I've done it all. I've tried it. It's not like I haven't given it a fair shot, right? I've read the book. I've watched the movie or documentary, if you want to call it that. It's more like a fiction, more like a Hollywood movie, but if you want to call it a documentary. I've tried it out, and I've realized what works and what doesn't work. And there's a lot of fluff out there. There's a lot of people selling fluff. And unfortunately, there's a market for it, right? There are a lot of people that, again, it's very unfortunate, but are just so desperate and just looking to change their lives so deeply that they'll just believe anything and buy into anything. So if somebody tells you, you know what, all you have to do is sit on your couch and visualize your goals and manifest your food, manifest your success. I was going to make a funny joke after this, so the food was a Freudian slip. Manifest your success, it's all going to come to you. And the joke is from a comedian. I forget who said this. It may have been Bill Burr or maybe it was Dave Chappelle. I don't know, one of those guys. But they said, you think starving kids in Africa aren't manifesting food? Wouldn't love to just sit there and manifest and then they're fed? It's just not real. There's a disconnect in that philosophy. So the point being, I went on a bit of a tangent there. Yeah, it's not about what works. It's about what works for you. First of all, get disciplined. Get disciplined and clean up your habits. And if you just keep your same work ethic that you have, this aggressive attitude that I'm going to outwork everybody, you're going to crush it. There's no way you're not going to win, but you got to get disciplined because you get in your own way. I'm talking to myself right now, my younger self. You're going to get in your own way with all your bad habits, so get disciplined. Second of all, get smart with money. Put freaking as much away as possible. Like, tighten up as much as you can. Because when I was younger, I made a lot of money. I started making six figures very young and then multiple six figures. But I was just, as you would expect, a young kid who starts making a lot of money, I was just spending it left and right. And it was just a lot of stupid things. And, all the luxury things I bought and all the Louis Vuittons and Gucci's and whatever, I have bags still with all that stuff still in its wrapper. I've never even used it. Because I'm not a materialistic person. I'm not a car guy. I'm not into any of that stuff. So it was just a waste. It was just not knowing what to do with my finances. So I would really tighten that up.
Get disciplined, especially with your habits, financial literacy, and live below your means. I feel like that's a lesson for almost every entrepreneur. They've kind of screwed over their money to the point where they needed to do that. So do that from the start.
And third, I would buy property, by the way. Third would be property. Because a lot of times I had the opportunity and the timing and considered buying property, but then I didn't. And that would have, we all know the real estate market now and what happened during the last few years. And yeah, that would have been an easy cash out.
Property, get disciplined, financial literacy, live below your means. What are some mentors that have majorly impacted you? Of course, you said Jim Rohn. Who else?
Yeah, I would say Jim Rohn first because he's the main guy who really delivered these messages in such a simplistic way that made sense, and just his overall attitude towards success in the future was really good. So definitely him. I mean, I've listened to all the main guys, the mainstream guys that you would know, and read their books and tuned into their stuff. I remember when I was really young, tuned into a lot of Tony Robbins and all his stuff on psychology and persuasion and all of that. It was interesting. I've listened to all the popular sales guys you might know. I tapped into some of the older guys too. I mean, going like generations and generations back. I had stages with this, right? So this is why again I can speak on not buying into everything and some of the fluff that's out there, because I've had stages where I dove deep into all this stuff. I had stages where I dove deep into the Napoleon Hills and Andrew Carnegie's and Dale Carnegie's and all these guys, Earl Nightingale's, like all these people. And then there was times where I just had to kind of separate myself from too much noise and then just look at what I believe and almost have to take a step away. And that was the progression of, I guess, the answer to your question. At some point, you learn a lot of the basics and the fundamentals and the messages that you need, and then you just have to disconnect from the noise in order to be able to think for yourself and pursue the path that you want to pursue. But nowadays, I look up to a lot of guys who are doing great things, like Elon Musk's of the world, people who are courageous, people who are making big bets on themselves, and people who operate on a real purpose. I've always loved and respected people who had one main singular purpose and were able to just dedicate their lives to that. That to me is very noble, and I've always searched for a purpose like that myself.
So almost be your own Buddha, but get inspiration from people who are running their life with purpose.
Yeah, I don't know about sitting under a tree and meditating, but yeah.
Let's dive deeper into sales. How do you keep your sales spear sharp?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, first stage would be training. So, having an actual platform where you're getting the right information. So, you're getting all of that information and you're absorbing it and you're learning it. So, it would be the training aspect of it. Next would be the practicing, role playing, drilling to actually put some of these concepts into work. And then third would be the real life experience, actually getting in front of prospects, turning up the volume of prospects that you're in front of, and going through the ups and downs, going through, losing deals because you couldn't handle an objection or couldn't handle a scenario, or you weren't creative enough to get yourself out of that position, and get the prospect on your side, or you couldn't get the influencers on your side to influence the main decision maker. All these things come from real life experience. So I would say I would look at it in those three stages: learning and training, drilling and role playing and rehearsing, and then actual life experience.
Love it. And don't be afraid to fail, basically. It's part of the process.
Yeah, there is no failure in sales. There is no failure in sales. There's no shortage of prospects I can speak to for any product or service. I mean, some niches are a lot smaller and there's a smaller market that you're looking at, but regardless, you as the individual, you can go into any industry, sell any product or service. Salespeople are always in demand. Every business is a business because of sales. Without sales, without top line revenue, you don't have a business. You have a hobby. So sales is always top priority. Sales is always the most important thing, no matter what anybody says, right? And there is no losing. It's just you lose a deal, sure, you lose the battle short term, but you can always win the war.
I love that. Training, learning, practice, role play, drill, experience, and every experience is a lesson. What would you say every salesperson needs to start doing on their calls, or whether it's in person, that you don't see a lot of salespeople do?
That's a great question. There are a lot of things that I don't see a lot of salespeople do, and I think they should do more of, especially nowadays. It's interesting because being very young in sales and then growing up in the sales world in all the industries that I've worked in, I've sold everything under the sun, right? From door-to-door sales to call center sales to B2B, to in office sales, to cars, to health and fitness, to medical and healthcare products like PPE, to telecommunication. I've literally sold everything under the sun. And nowadays, I work with salespeople and business owners in all industries, so I'm exposed to it. So there are a lot that I see in terms of mistakes, And again, it's funny to see the transition of things. And I think as the world is changing and evolving and technology is becoming more prevalent and people are becoming more comfortable, there are more options, there are more tools at our disposal. One thing that's going away is the professional attitude and the professional mannerisms of salespeople, the professional level of responsibility that I'm here to earn your business or I'm here to get this deal done. That attitude I don't see much of. It's a much more lax attitude. You know, you would see young salespeople, you know, like 18-year-old salespeople hopping on a call with a high-level executive and saying, "Hey man, so what's up? Yeah, so you know, I'm just gonna ask you a couple questions, and you know, if this looks good, then all right, we'll schedule you in." That's not how you talk to a freaking executive, and that's not how you operate as a salesperson. I don't care if I'm the seasoned veteran here, and I'm sitting in front of an 18-year-old. I'm still gonna conduct myself in a way where I feel proud of how I'm representing myself, my product, my service, and my brand and company. So I feel like I came up in a world where that level of professionalism and respect was a really big deal, and I'm seeing that completely disintegrate nowadays, and that's a big change and I think a big mistake. But there's so much we can get into in terms of what I see, but that's just the main one that came to my mind because I'm thinking of a couple people right now.
It's interesting because I feel like this is so true. When I talk to, especially young guys who reach out to me, who are trying to be my appointment setter or salesperson or video editor, whatever it is, it's almost like coming into the frame of like they're trying to over qualify you instead of actually coming into it with this almost attitude of gratitude where it's like, hey, thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for even considering my business. It's a different way of doing things. And do you think it's because a lot of gurus just are pushing this image that they know what they're doing in sales, but they haven't actually been in front of those high level executives, and so they're kind of pushing this message of like qualify the person and do this and do this and do that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. And I think, again, it's the lack of work ethic and drive and real life experience that's causing it as well. But all these gurus that are, you know, teaching a lot of this stuff have never worked a sales job in their lives, right? They may have started in the online space and think that this is the reality of businesses and sales teams and sales operations, and it's not. You know, you can go into any major company, go into their stores, go into their call centers, go into their sales operations, and you'll see a completely different thing. That some of these gurus, no matter how famous they are or how published they are in the online space, it's just they have no idea what they're talking about. And I can spot that from a mile away. And honestly, I can maybe think of one or two guys right now that have legitimate advice. Everybody else has never worked sales a day in their lives. I can just tell. I can see it. So absolutely, it's that advice. And again, because everybody's attracted to the shiny object, everybody follows the same trend, follows the same pattern. That's why, you know, me and you see it a lot. We see a lot of people hitting us up for roles and positions in our companies, and it's like the same script, the same way, the same approach, the same position everybody's looking at because one guy made it popular in the online realm, right? So this is what I mean, think for yourself and define success for yourself, right? So yeah, it's a big one that I see nowadays, and it's definitely a mistake.
I love that. I remember I reached out to someone to also be on this podcast, and the way that they replied to me was so professional. Like they're like, "Thank you so much for considering even my brand. I appreciate you." And I'm like, I feel so appreciated here. Like it makes me want to just look into this guy's products for the sake that he was professional, even though I wasn't even looking at his products before, because he was so professional. So I love this because I feel like this is needed, especially with guys who reach out to me or reach out to you or reach out to businesses. They're like, are you looking for this? It's almost like an ad instead of a real human being who's showing appreciation behind the sales process. What I want to get
Yeah.
in, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the only time you don't say thank you is when you close the deal. You always say congratulations. You know, I'm happy that you invested in yourself, or I'm very excited for you to get these results and whatever else. That's the only time you don't say thank you. Besides that, yes, your responsibility is to earn their business, and your responsibility is to let them know that you're appreciative of their time and you're gonna respect their time, and you're just doing the right things, right? You're just being a good person. It's as simple as that.
I love that. So always say thank you before the close, but never after
Yeah,
the.
once you close the deal, you don't say thank you. You know, what are you thanking them for? If anything, they should be thanking you because your products and services should be helping them. If you're selling a good product and service, you should be getting a real result out there to your prospects. So it's a win-win scenario. Yes, they paid you, but I'm not thanking you for that because you got a much more valuable exchange than that money. Usually, if I'm paying you something, I believe what I'm getting in return is at least double or triple that value. That's why I'm paying this amount for it, right? So there's no thank you there. It's thank you for your time, but congratulations on getting this done.
So as someone who's been leading sales teams and has led a lot of big sales teams, what do you find is the biggest bottleneck or challenge that leaders have in terms of getting their sales teams to perform better?
Yeah, I think step number one would be leading by example. So it would be getting your own performance there. I used to build out sales teams for different companies, and we had layers of leadership. So we had, directors, general managers, sales managers. So there was multiple layers. And a lot of the times, things will fall apart within a specific team where the leader themselves wasn't leading by example. They weren't performing. They weren't closing deals. They weren't putting numbers up. So everybody on their team lost that trust in them. If you can't perform, how can I perform? If you can't close deals, how can I close deals? So I would say leading by example and demonstrating not only the right habits, but also the performance. So that would be the first thing. The second would be managing different personalities. I remember, hiring and training and managing anywhere from an 18-year-old girl to a 50-something-year-old man with a kid and family, right? So I've managed everything in between. And you're not going to talk to these individuals the same way. You're not going to train them the same way. They're not going to resonate with your message or with your teachings the same way. So you have to understand how to push certain buttons, how to motivate people in different ways. You have to understand what they're looking to get out of the opportunity that you have for them. So all these different things play a part as well. But those would be what I would look at. And then, of course, having the right systems, processes, scripts in place that are not only actually efficient, they work, you can get results, but they're also duplicatable.
Okay,
Because if you don't have
yeah.
the same script and process for everybody, it's just not going to work out well.
Leading by example with results and performance, managing different personalities and understanding what motivates them, and having the systems, processes, and scripts that's actually scalable.
That's duplicatable. That's what makes it scalable. So it's the duplication, right? Because if I have just one salesperson and I'm training them, okay, that's fine. They can kind of go off personality. They can borrow a couple things that I do and tips and tricks and things of that nature, and they can maybe do well, get results. But then I scale my team. I have 2, 3, 5, 10 salespeople. Now at a certain point, I can't touch base with every one of them individually myself. Now you have to kind of build out and scale out your team. It's just not going to make sense if you don't have very systemized, duplicatable processes.
I love that. Dude, I want to get into a portion of this podcast. We call it rapid fire. First thing that comes into your head. Couple fun questions, but I also think a couple questions that make people think. We'll try to go for like 30 seconds to a minute, but if it takes more, we can do more. Okay?
All right, let me take a sip of my coffee before this rapid fire. It's felt pretty rapid fire already.
This one is even 10xing that. It's going faster.
All right, let's 100x it.
All right. So first question. What are 3 traits or words your friends would use to describe you?
You're my friend. You should answer this. Disciplined. I'm gonna say funny, even though nobody expected that. That's a
This is true.
curveball. That's a curveball. I would say hard worker, but that's kind of the same thing as disciplined in a way. This is hard because I don't want to brag about myself. So,
Brag, man. Brag.
yeah, leader. There.
I like that.
Those are 3. It's all positive, of course, because I think highly of myself. But
What are 3 positive traits that you feel like you're working on right now, that you're developing?
better sleep habits, because I've never cared for sleep, and to this day, I'm not getting good sleep. If I'm getting 4 or 5 hours, I'm good with that. So better sleep habits. Probably being less stubborn on certain things, because I'm very rigid and stubborn. and I use that to my advantage. I think that's a really, I think that's a gift, but it could also be a curse. And third one, this is hard to do rapid fire because I have to think about myself here, that I'm still working on. Let's see. It's a hard one. What am I still working on? Because my focus is so centered around a few things, right? So I'm not really trying to work on many things. I'm just working on the main priorities that I have. Yeah.
Cool.
I don't know, to be honest.
So
I got 2 out of 3.
sleep habits, less stubborn. What is your greatest fear?
Probably not fulfilling my potential.
I see this as a theme with every entrepreneur. Every entrepreneur. What is the last book you read, and why did you read it? And what is the best book you read?
The last book I read, I'm reading right now. Actually, I'm still not done. It's by Aristotle, and it's it's a republication of all those works, and it's just a bunch of philosophy, and I'm still going through it. But it's talking about all the different dialogues of Socrates and his death and everything else. So that's the one I'm currently reading. So technically, it's the last book I've read. The best book I've read, again, it's a really hard one because I have so many books behind me here. So they're.
If you could choose one to read for the rest of your life and you couldn't read any other book.
Meditations, probably
Wow.
Meditations, Marcus Aurelius. Yeah.
That's a big one, huh?
Yeah, that one is, I think, very profound. I've told you before so many times why I really like it. Again, you're getting a glimpse into the mind of an emperor,
I love that.
and this is his personal diary.
What's the one quote you live by, or the best quote you've ever heard?
It comes from Marcus Aurelius. Meditations again. Be strict with yourself and tolerant with others.
Be strict with yourself and tolerant with others. How do you apply this to your life?
So I'm extremely hard on myself, extremely hard. And I have a saying that I've said for a very long time, always grateful, never satisfied. And to me, that's a motivator. That's a driver. It doesn't mean I'm never satisfied with material possessions. People take that the wrong way and they get confused. It just means I'm never satisfied with my own self-development and growth because I realize how much potential there is. The more you grow and expand, the more your potential expands. It's a never-ending game. You'll never catch it. You'll never actually fulfill that potential, quote-unquote. You'll just continue to push as much as you can push until the clock, times out. So I put very high standards on myself. I'm not always meeting these standards. I fall short of them a lot of times. That's fine. But as long as I wake up again and tomorrow I put that standard up again and I'm continuing to raise the bar. So I'm very strict with myself. I prioritize discipline in a very I put discipline in a very high place in my life in general. But in terms of others, I mean, I'm not a judgmental person at all. I really don't care what you do with yourself, with your body, in your house, what you believe, what you don't believe. It really does not matter to me at all. So I just believe in being nice to others, being kind to others, being, there's never a reason to be mad. You'll never see me, even in the worst of situations, be mad or upset or break character because it's just not me. I just don't think life is serious enough to stress or to get mad or to treat others badly. So I think you should be very tolerant with others, and you never know anybody's story. You're not in anybody's head. You don't know what they're going through. So be tolerant with others, but be strict with yourself. Don't play victim with yourself. Don't be weak. Put some real standards and hold yourself accountable. And people always say, I'm so hard on myself, and their friends usually, tell them, you shouldn't be so hard. It's okay to eat a cookie. No, it's not. You're eating a bunch of garbage and sugar. It's not okay to eat a cookie. It's better to be, disciplined. But yeah, if you ate a cookie, sure. I'm not saying beat yourself up over it, but don't tell yourself that's okay. Put some discipline into your own life. So that's what I mean by that.
I love that. Last two. If you could choose one animal to be, what would you choose? Other than human.
It's a hard one. Probably an eagle.
Interesting. Why?
This is just off the top of my head. I mean, I haven't really ever put any thought into this. Because they're usually solo, and I've always been very very happy by myself, even though obviously I have a long-term partner and all of that. But I have no problem being by myself and introverting. I'm very comfortable. I feel like eagles are usually, top of the mountains, peaks. It represents freedom and just flying all over the place, and they're very strong, powerful. They're predators. They have a lot of respect in their domains. So yeah, probably for those reasons.
I love it. And if you could choose one superpower, what would you choose?
That's a hard one because there's so much. I can't choose something silly. It would have to be something real. If I have that option, honestly, I might not use it in the sense of a superpower. I might use it for my curiosity. So I might choose time travel, for example, because I'm fascinated by history. I mean, completely fascinated. I could sit down and watch historic documentaries all day long. So I would go back to the time of like certain philosophers. I would go back to ancient Egypt and see what it was like when they were building those pyramids. I would go back to all different periods of history and just see things for myself. So that would be my superpower.
I love that. Dude, thank you so much for hopping on. I appreciate you. This has been fire for people who not only are in sales, but just personal development. You need to watch this again. There was a lot that was covered. I took like 3 pages of notes here. For people who want to know more about you, how can they find you out? Where should they find you?
Yeah, so it's at Pouya Haidari on all social media, and then you can just go to the website as well, pouyahaidari.com. You can reach out, be happy to help.
Thanks so much, bro. We'll stay on here for a sec, but for everybody who watched, hope you enjoy. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will talk soon.